Hello, my name is AnnaRae Wood. This is my case presentation for Journalism 536, Crisis Communication. The case I am presenting is Saving the Alaska SeaLife Center. The center was created by a nonprofit group called the Seaward Association for the Advancement of Marine Science. The goal was to create a world-class marine research, wildlife rehabilitation, and public education institution adjacent to the existing University of Alaska Seaward Marine Center on Resurrection Bay in Seaward, Alaska. As a response to the Exxon Valdez oil spill in 1989, the Alaskan legislature appropriated $12.5 million from the criminal settlement funds as a state grant to the city of Seaward to develop the center. The Alaska SeaLife Center became a marine mammal rehabilitation center as well as a center for education and research related to the natural resources injured by the oil spill. On May 2, 1998, the Alaska SeaLife Center officially opened. The center combines a public aquarium with marine research, education, and wildlife response. In fact, it is the only facility in Alaska to do so. The nonprofit is the only permanent marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation facility in the state. The Alaska SeaLife Center crisis arose in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic halted just about everything in the world and went on lockdown. Even after the world started to reopen, tourism remained severely impacted, and the center was threatened with being closed. The timeline of this campaign begins in March of 2020 and ends September 30th, 2020. In March 2020, COVID-19 was officially announced as a global pandemic by the World Health Organization. A few months later, Rising Tide Communications and the center leadership team developed a PR campaign to raise funds to save the center. The campaign officially launched on July 13th, 2020. Just 1 week after the campaign launched, the center raised $1 million, which was half of the original goal. 6 weeks after the campaign launched, the center reached its $2 million goal, and at the end of the campaign, which was September 30th, 2020, the center had raised a total of $4,160,000. The crisis that the Alaska SeaLife Center faced was being shut down. Cruise ship season was still canceled, which typically brought in thousands of tourists. The center predicted a 70% loss of its annual visitor revenues. With the projected figures of revenues, cost of operation, and availability of rescue funds, the center concluded that they would need to raise $2 million to prevent closing down permanently. If the Alaska SeaLife Center were to close, the animals would be sent to other facilities, research projects would be canceled, and dozens of employees laid off. The center did not want to see this happen, so they devised a PR plan to raise the necessary funds to keep the facility up and running. Internal stakeholders such as the CEO, board members, employees, and volunteers viewed this crisis as a very serious threat. The crisis could have been the end of the organization. Each internal stakeholder group saw it not only as a loss of work, but as a loss to the community. Additionally, external stakeholders, such as news media, the public, the tourism industry, and other organizations that partnered with the center, also viewed this as a potential loss to the community. This kind of crisis would be categorized as a victim crisis. The events of COVID-19 were completely out of the hands of the Alaska SeaLife Center. Due to the nature of this crisis, the public doesn't hold the organization accountable. No one could have seen a pandemic of this scale coming and shutting down the world. Through my research, it does not appear that the organization has had any major crises prior to the pandemic. All article searches and news stories were about the threat of closing if enough funds were not raised. The center initially targeted Alaskans and out-of-state supporters as their publics. Both publics already had a vested interest in the organization, and it would not have made any sense for the center to reach out to partnering organizations because they were most likely put in a similar situation due to COVID. Additionally, they also reached out to local news organizations prior to the launch of their campaign to allow them to visit the center and plan their coverage. There wasn't much segmentation when it came to the public. The primary target, again, were Alaskans and out-of-state supporters. These two groups were the most likely to donate money in the hopes of keeping the center running. However, their broad reach did encompass the general public. There weren't different messages based on the target audience. As far as segmenting media coverage, the Alaska SeaLife Center reached out to local media. However, they did not reach out to national news outlets. They received that earned attention on their own. It is unclear if they considered factors of SCCT. However, in the organization's original video asking for donations, whether they realized it or not, they used a bolstering strategy. They do this by emphasizing the value that they bring to their community, such as tourism, education, wildlife rehabilitation, and more to encourage donations. Given the situation that the center was put in, which was ununique to many organizations, the organization made a public plea for help in saving the center. Based on research the center conducted with the experts from the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the tourism industry, and other stakeholders, the segmentation was appropriate. However, they could have used the situational theory of publics to segment their messages. They could have had the same general message, but each altered a little bit based on the public that they were trying to reach. To segment using the situational theory of publics, I would suggest segmenting based off of levels of involvement in marine life protection and research, the previous relationship with the center, and the history of giving to and/or donating to nonprofit organizations. I would suggest having 2 messages for each segmented group. The first message would be for publics who are not very involved with marine life protection, have low involvement with the center prior to the campaign, and have little to no history of giving or volunteering to nonprofit organizations. The second message would be to publics who are highly involved in marine life protection, have an established relationship with the center, and or have a strong history of volunteering or donating to nonprofit organizations. The broad strategy of this campaign was to raise awareness of the Alaska SeaLife Center's future if they did not receive donations by being honest with its publics about its situation and driving a call to action to donate money. The goals of this campaign were threefold. The first was to be transparent about the crisis and make the issue widely known. The second was to activate the public and funds to save the center. And the third was to grow audience, donor base, and long-term impact of the center. Each goal has a specific set of objectives to help them achieve its goal. The first objective for Goal 1 is to create outreach tools that speak directly to supporters with a clear call to action. The second was to achieve comprehensive Alaskan media coverage and significant national coverage. For Goal 2, the objectives were to raise $2 million by September 2020 and to leverage corporate contributions. And for Goal 3, the objectives were to increase donor contact base, increase membership, and increase audience on social media channels. The tactics used were a video message, online information dissemination, social media, and news coverage. The center had a strong in-house video capabilities and a compelling message and charismatic animals. This led them to create a script and make a video campaign. They utilized its own website and newsletter to inform its publics of the campaign and its goal. Additionally, the organization posted its video on its own media pages, such as Facebook and YouTube, And additionally, the Save the Alaska Sea Life Center campaign was aired on local and national news outlets. They gained attention from news outlets such as Forbes, Good Morning America, The Associated Press, Seattle Times, and The Guardian. There was also coordination with the Center for SeaWorld and National Geographic, which increased visibility of the campaign to a global scale. I believe that given the situation that the center was in, the tactics, tools, and media used were very appropriate. The organization couldn't spend an extraordinary amount of money for this campaign, so they relied on owned and earned media. They used their own channels to disseminate information about the campaign and its goal. Meanwhile, they reached out to local news and received a lot of earned media on a national level. Other tactics that I would have used would have been the use of Instagram and TikTok at the time. Their Instagram account has a strong presence with a lot of engagement and likes on their post. Additionally, during this time, Instagram started the creation of Instagram fundraisers in August 2020, so while this would have been in the middle of their campaign, they still could have benefited from this and potentially reached a different audience than the ones that they were currently reaching. TikTok also became a very popular platform during the pandemic, generating thousands and thousands of users daily. Using TikTok also could have raised more awareness that could have brought more attention to the predicament that the center was facing. Both of these platforms, there's a strong likelihood that they would have gained a lot of earned media attention from followers and people who feel strongly about keeping the center running. Was the campaign successful according to the situational crisis communications theory? I believe so. The crisis communication of this campaign was appropriate for the crisis that the center was in. Its campaign was also highly effective. Within the first week of the campaign, they met half of their original fundraising goal. And by the end, they surpassed their goal, doubling their $2 million goal. And while I don't think the crisis pairs well with any of the other theories that we've talked about or learned about, I suppose the closest one would be image repair theory. Although they didn't have any reputational damage to the organization before the crisis, it was facing a threat of being closed due to lack of funding caused by COVID. And in this theory, it determines what is the threatening or damaging to the organization and determines which publics must be addressed and or persuaded in order to maintain or restore positive image. In this crisis, the organization had to bolster its reputation to receive donations and achieve its goals. The output of this campaign resulted in one video that was put on multiple platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, the center's website, and was used in national news coverage as well. And this is the message that was put out.
Hello from Seward, Alaska. I'm Tara Reamer, President and CEO of the Alaska Sea Life Center. I come to you today with devastating news. Based on our projections, the Alaska Sea Life Center may be forced to close our doors permanently at the end of this summer. If that happens, animals will be sent to other facilities, Alaska students will never again visit the puffins and Steller sea lions on a field trip, research that contributes valuable scientific understanding of Alaska's marine wildlife will be interrupted, and there will be no marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation facility to serve the orphaned and injured marine mammals of Alaska. The coronavirus pandemic has been uniquely devastating for the center. While our nonprofit mission includes marine research, education, and wildlife response, we earn the majority of our revenue over the summer. And it's obvious this summer's tourism season is just not going to be the same. Alaskans have made it a priority to visit us, and we appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts, but it has not been enough. This is why I am coming to you today to ask for your help. It's not too late to prevent the center from closing, and there are some things you can do to help us. You can visit us. You can become a member or extend your membership. you can donate, and finally, you can help spread the word. Share our social media posts, start a fundraiser on our behalf. Thank you to all guests and members, past, present, and future, for helping to sustain the center's mission. We have been honored to serve you for the last 22 years while generating and sharing scientific knowledge to promote understanding and stewardship of Alaska's marine ecosystems. We understand this is a hard time for all, but your support now will ensure that we can be here for you tomorrow and fulfill our mission for generations to come. Thank you.
Their campaign left an overall positive impact. Community members were left feeling inspired, leading to children having lemonade stands to raise money, breweries promoting limited edition beers, artists holding auctions, and musicians holding fundraising concerts. Additionally, there were 1,145 unique Facebook fundraisers for the center. While the center wasn't facing any negative sentiments from the public, the campaign only increased the positive public perception of the organization. To evaluate this campaign, the only research method that was really used was observation. Evaluators looked at the numbers that they generated through donations, video views, and shares, and number of news pieces. Another research method that I would suggest would be to send out a survey to all the members and those subscribed to the newsletter, asking how the campaign impacted them, which actions they took, and how they perceive the organization now. The campaign was very successful in reaching its goals. It had 150,000 donors, 41% of which were new. It had 360,000 campaign video views and 10,000 campaign video shares. They had over 30 pieces of media coverage. They had 5,125 memberships purchased in 2020, which is a 195% growth from 2019. And they also had a 25% growth on social media channels. Based on the goals and success of this campaign, I don't have any real critiques of the campaign. They surpassed their fundraising goals and achieved all of their other goals lined out in their plan. If I had any suggestions, it would have been to segment the public into a little bit more of a defined audience. However, the approach that the center took appeared to work out in their favor regardless of formal theories. These are my discussion questions. So 1, if you were in charge of this campaign, would you have done anything differently? If so, what would you have done differently and why? 2, what part of this campaign stood out to you the most? 3, during the pandemic, did you hear about this campaign? If so, how, and did you donate or share their message? 4, the pandemic left many nonprofit organizations struggling in a similar predicament as the Alaska SeaLife Center. Does this campaign remind you of a similar campaign that ran during the pandemic? If so, what organization was it for? What are the similarities of the campaign? What are the differences? And 5, what did you take away from this campaign that might apply to a campaign in the future? Those are all my discussion questions. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and here are my references.